Hello, and welcome back to my ongoing game development series. In the last episode, we came up with a long-term development plan for the game and decided on our immediate course of action. This involved setting up a logger and getting a window on screen. As mentioned in the last episode, I'm going to be making my own engine alongside the game. A bit of a challenge I faced when actually coding this was what to leave to the engine and what to leave to the implementation of the engine. I'm making it with the mentality that other people are going to be using it for their own projects sometime in the future, so I'm considering what should be left to me and what should be left to them. I want to strike a balance between a large amount of control over the engine with a minimal amount of boilerplate code that they need to write. So let's take the logger as an example for this. I certainly want my engine to have basic logging capabilities, especially since I'm actively developing it and engine-side errors are inevitable. But what should be logging these errors, the engine itself or the game that's using it? I decided it would be best to leave this to the game. That way the people making it get control over what is logged and where it is logged to. If an engine-side error occurs, this can be taken care of via a callback function that the developer can do whatever they want with. Where it stands right now, the logger class is limited to writing to a file, but can also write to the console at the same time if you tell it to. I was initially planning on making it able to write to any standard output stream, which are the most common way of doing input and output operations in C++. The problem with this is that C++ doesn't allow you to clone streams, and as a result of this you can't transfer ownership of one after it's been created. So in order for the logger to own the stream that it's writing to, it must create it itself, you can't just give one to it. Ownership of the stream is kind of important because normally you'd expect objects to own the things that make them up. So to keep things simple, I've just made a method that allows the logger to create its own file stream if you give it a path. It will then retain complete control over this stream as long as it remains open, after which point we don't really care too much. Moving on to the window, I'm using a library called glfw in order to make the window and do most of the heavy lifting for me. The reason I'm using this is because I've heard tales from people who have used Windows.h and they're not pleasant to say the least. I don't want to have a bad time, and the more distance put between me and it, the better. glfw also has the advantage of being compatible across platforms, and it's a library that I've seen used in a lot of different places, which makes it a basket that I am more than comfortable to put a few eggs in. I've spent quite a bit of time abstracting various parts of the library into a single window object that can then be extended upon however the developer sees fit. The reason I had to spend time on this is because while my engine is being made in C++, glfw is made in C. The two aren't entirely distinct languages. C++ is a superset of C, meaning any valid C code is also valid C++ code, but not all C++ code is valid C code. C is a strictly procedural language and doesn't have any object-oriented capabilities, whereas C++ does. Stylistically, I prefer object-oriented over procedural, so I've created a general-purpose window class that wraps most of glfw's major capabilities in a neat little box. So how are we actually going to draw our game onto this window? If we want to consider ourselves at all seriously in this day and age, we'll need to be able to take advantage of hardware-accelerated rendering. This involves using that $300 brick of copper and silicon that you have sticking out of your motherboard. Today there are two major graphics APIs that we have access to, OpenGL and DirectX. OpenGL has been around for about 25 years now and is still a very dominant player across various platforms and devices thanks to the multiple updates and spin-off versions it's seen. DirectX, on the other hand, does all the same stuff as OpenGL but is platform locked to Windows, and that's about it. From what I've read, there's no immediate advantage to using DirectX other than the fact that it's directly integrated into Windows, which I suppose is somehow supposed to be a positive thing. If you believe what other people at Valve say, and personally I do, then OpenGL achieves similar if not better performance compared to DirectX in almost all cases. Why do people use this again? What is apparently DirectX's biggest strength to me just comes across like its biggest weakness. I suppose what I'm trying to say is that I'm not going to be using DirectX for this project. But there's a third API I've neglected to mention. Some of you may know about it. In fact, it was one of the things that was actually holding this project back, because I was initially planning on using it. I'm talking about Vulkan, and quite simply, Vulkan is overkill. It does all the same stuff as DirectX and OpenGL, albeit a lot faster and requiring about 8 times the work on my part. I decided against using it sometime back in February when I considered that whatever performance boost I get out of it for a 2D top-down game will not justify the headache it gives me. Remember what I said in the last video about dumb ideas making more work for myself? This is what I meant. I'm not going to lie, I may want to use Vulkan sometime in the future, but for now I'm just going to use OpenGL for the sake of not wanting to return myself with a non-zero exit code, if you catch my drift. So, what are our next steps? I'd say it's getting OpenGL to render us something. At the bare minimum this should be a triangle, but I may want to get to rendering a texture if I feel especially productive. After that we'll branch out into multiple textures, and I'll see if we can't get any of them moving. I do have university exams coming up in the next few weeks which I'm going to be prioritizing. So if I don't upload a video in that time, that's going to be why. I'm still going to try, but no guarantees. If you want to keep up to date with the development of my game, be sure to subscribe to this channel. I'm going to be posting regular update videos at least once every 2 weeks where I talk about where development is and the direction it's heading in. If you'd like to follow me outside of YouTube, I have a Discord server linked in the description where you can talk to me directly. Other than that, I'm VD15 and I'll see you next time.